Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Gerber, Denominational Minister for Youth and Young Adults for Mennonite Church USA and editor of The Gathering Place, which is an interactive website for Anabaptist youth leaders to learn, be, and connect. And you can join the Gathering Place community at www.thegatheringplace.us. Well, every month on The Gathering Place, we talk about a specific theme, and everything that we do hinges upon that theme. This month in February, we have chosen the theme, A Contemporary Anabaptist Witness. What does peacemaking look like today in the 21st century? And today I'm thrilled to have Jason Boone with us, who's the coordinating minister of the Peace and Justice Support Network for Mennonite Church USA and Mennonite Missions. And he is going to be leading our group today in a guided conversation about this theme of what in the world does Anabaptist witness look like today in a world of endless war, and as far as what is a 21st century peacemaking witness all about, especially as it relates to our youth and young adults. So Jason, welcome to The Gathering Place. It's so good to have you here today, and why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself for a little bit here. Tell us what you do. Tell us what your role is within Mennonite Church USA, and maybe what you hope will happen here for this next hour together. So welcome.
Thanks. I really appreciate the chance to, thanks for inviting me here. And I know some of you folks here, and it's good to see Ben and Clayton and Michelle, and I'm glad to see Tori and Mike. Look forward to get to know you a little bit better on this call. Yeah, so I'm coordinating minister of the Peace and Justice Support Network of Mennonite Church USA and Mennonite Mission Network. It rolls off the tongue. And the basic responsibility is to support and encourage and strengthen peace activities across our church. That doesn't mean that all peace activities flow from this office. That's certainly not the case. It is more a matter of us trying to support, and if we can offer any assistance and help the good things that are already going on across the church, that's when we function best. Tell you, the call today, I think what precipitated it a lot was last summer in Kansas City. A lot of things happened, of course, but one big thing was we passed a resolution, the Faithful Witness Amidst Endless War resolution. And that basically said, you know, we're living in a different time of war. We're living in a different kind of where war is prosecuted differently. It's not as traditional where the army goes and the army either wins or loses and comes back. It's this perpetual war machine that's in some cases is not hard to detect, but it's still going on. And so what does that mean for us? Does our peace witness and our activities, do they need to change? Do they need to shift in this new environment? It was really, I think it was a really exciting resolution, and it passed, I think, almost unanimously. In my position here, I'm Andre Gingrich Stoner of Mennonite Church USA is my supervisor, and we work together. And we really felt like this is a good call to the church to do some real reflecting and think, okay, let's really clean out the closet here. Let's look at what we're doing and who we are, and use this as a time to dream big dreams, and use it as a time to say, you know, what might be God, where might God be leading us now in this new time? When we know that there are challenges within the church, we know that there are challenges in the globe, but we still honor the fact that the church is the church, and it plays an important, crucial part in God's mission of reconciliation in the world. And so we do believe that there's still a place for the church to work, and especially the place for Historic Peace Church and the Mennonite Church to be. So we began after Kansas City to think about some of the components of what the resolution of implementing it would look like, and we're working with different groups, and it's an invigorating time, like I said, because I think it's a time to dream. But what we did realize was we weren't developing anything that focused on youth or young adults, and some of that is, I'll be honest, and I've been in my position for about 4 years, and we haven't done a lot with youth, and it's sort of a chicken and egg thing, I think. We want to do some things, but we don't exactly know what to do, and then I think we're kind of caught in this cycle where we are still responding to maybe old paradigms of peacemaking with our youth in some ways. Honestly, as I said, peace doesn't begin and end in this office, and I don't want to insert myself in places where I'm not welcomed. The only youth-oriented peace questions I get are, well, what about CO status? it seems like that really encapsulates a lot of what it means for young people to think about their pacifist witness today. And for folks who work with youth and you're familiar with this, you know that there's just not a lot of information there to tell you. CO status is essentially a non-starter. It's not real. There are things you can do, but it's not going to be officially recognized. And then you think about the bigger ramifications that it's probably not going to be implemented, especially if we're talking about a new way to prosecute war. So that sort of leaves you with, some people are concerned and think about being non-registrants for the draft. But I'll be candid with you, every call I've taken about that question has been from parents saying, please talk my kid out of doing this. Because the ramifications for being a non-registrant now are draconian. And so, of course, we want people to follow their conscience and do it, but people need to understand. But that's really been the basic, that's all sort of that's all the interest that's been expressed about our Peace Witness for Youth. But in this time of sort of reconfiguring things, I wanted to start having intentional conversations with folks who work with youth and are concerned about it, to first see where we are. So there is more going on than just CO status. I'm sure of this because I know our church is brilliant at contextualizing and passing on this history in new ways. I just don't know about everything. So I wanted to do that. And then I wanted to get feedback and enlist some other people to dream and say, okay, well, what would it look like? And normally I do this as part of my work on any subject, and I'll do one-on-one conversations. But when Rachel invited me to do this, I thought this would be a great time to have a conversation as a group, because I'm sure what you all share here is going to be edifying, not just to me, but to each other. So with that groundwork being laid there, I would like maybe to start out by giving everyone a chance to introduce yourself, where you're from, just a little bit of your context, and then maybe respond to the first question that we had put out there. And again, this is just kind of a survey-taking practice. So how does your church help youth understand and identify with, and I guess we could add in and live out a Mennonite peace position? So if we could do that maybe for this first section, and I wrote down the names of people sort of as they joined the call, and so we'll just use that as the roll call here. And I had Michelle as coming on first, so I'd invite Michelle or one of your students or however you want to do it. I know you got a good audience there. Just tell us a little bit about where you're calling from, where you're joining in from, and how are you addressing this Mennonite Anabaptist Peace Witness today?
Hi, I'm Michelle Hirschberger, and I represent not only myself but also my youth ministry class, who are almost all here. We're a little bit earlier than our start time for the class, so there's about 12 of us. I think it's safe to say that not everybody in this class would call themselves Mennonites or have a pacifist peace position, but many are familiar with it. Is that safe to say, class? Yeah. All right. That being said, I can say one of the things I did when I was a youth pastor, and would you like one or two of my students to also say how the peace position has been lived out in their church?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
One of the things that my husband Dell and I did, we were pastors during the Iraq War and the Persian Gulf War, and we tried to connect with veterans, and we had a veteran come and speak to our youth group, which kind of caused some anxiety with the congregation, but we wanted to show that we cared, and we wanted to hear his viewpoint of the war. And actually, he was a pacifist after he said he wished he knew some of the theology that we knew before he had enlisted. Emily?
Sure. Should I talk from here?
Can you hear Emily?
Hi.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay. So I remember one Sunday school class we had one of the persons in our congregation come and talk to us about being a conscientious objector, and so that would be definitely one of the times we actually talked about our stance about peace. But I think there could be more conversations that happen. That was the only one that I really remember
that's it from us for now.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that insight. Next person I have is Clayton.
All right, yeah, I'm Clayton. I also live in Heston. I can actually probably see the building that Michelle and her students are in right now. But yeah, I'm in my office, one of the pastors here at Heston Mennonite. And when I'm thinking about how I'd answer this question, I'm thinking about a time when I first got here. Probably I had been here just over a month, and the high school for the first time was doing a Veterans Day ceremony, and so myself and one of the other Mennonite pastors in town, Isaac Landis, we talked about, you know, how do we respond to this? How do we engage with this topic? So in the end, we ended up having a veteran that has connected with his church, veteran of the Vietnam War, who is now a pacifist, similar to Michelle's story, share of his experience. And he was very, very frank and very realistic about how he came back from the war, and kind of sharing the less glamorous side. And following his presentation, we talked a little bit about sort of our theological side of it, and I would say generally we had pretty mixed results. Some of the students were in support of it, thought it was a neat idea. It was neat to hear from somebody that had experienced war. Others were wondering why we even talked about it. It's not that big a deal. All the way to others saying we shouldn't be talking about this. This is not our place to be involved in anything kind of state-minded. So quite a mixture of reactions from the students. Also experienced a little bit of negative reaction from people within the community, primarily those that were in charge of the event and so of the school event. So there was a little bit of relationship rebuilding that had to happen, but mostly I think it was taken more personally than it was meant, that we were kind of just doing our sort of, you've heard one story, let us offer another story. So that's one major thing I think throughout my time of being here teaching Sunday school. I mean, we've done Sermon on the Mount, and very much had a focus couple Sundays on peacemaking, and it's come up several times. It's something that I'm passionate about. The other piece that kind of ties into it is the sort of patriotism piece, and as we've talked about sort of political realities, this idea of perpetual war and sort of the military machine that is present in the U.S. And other countries, you know, how that affects our Christian witness and what it means to be Anabaptist Mennonites.
Clayton, thanks so much for sharing that. It's funny, the first two folks talking about involving veterans in there, you know, as a way to increase your own peace witness, and that's an issue that we're working on a lot with Peace and Justice Support Network. But what we found is we thought that there would be a big divide, and there is in a lot of ways, but I think there are more veterans who contribute already to our peace witness, and we just don't know about. So that's very interesting. I'd ask Mike if he'd want to share now.
Yeah, it's interesting how you started, because I've been a Mennonite youth pastor for 10 years, and the only times I get asked about it is high school seniors turning 18 who ask me what they have to do. And so I think lately for me, the main thing has been that I've focused on is after some of the Muslim terrorist acts in Paris a year ago, I really felt the need to look at some interfaith relations in our area, because we have a mosque just 10 miles down the road, and I know some people there. And I felt, as I discussed it, to ask if we could invite some of those Muslim leaders to come and speak to our youth group. I felt a lot of resistance. And I think it was just some ignorance and fear. But I found I've had to take baby steps here towards developing some interfaith relationships. And I've been trying to work at the whole peace and justice issue from a matter of, let's build relationships, let's help people understand our faith, but also understand theirs. And the Jews and Muslims I know in the area are just as passionately committed to peace and justice as we are. And I'd like to build that bridge more and more. And I'm also, just with the political season coming up, I see a lot of kids acting, getting involved, and maybe, yeah, I'm kind of curious what Clayton mentioned on that patriotism line. I think it's something that'll be good to discuss in the coming year. But not that many kids express that much interest in the bigger picture of warfare. But I think I've got some practical things to walk out with relationships with those not like us.
And where are you calling from, Mike? I'm sorry, what's your
I'm sorry,
area?
I'm the youth pastor of Blooming Glen Mennonite in eastern Pennsylvania.
I just think it's very fascinating. You talk about going that relational route and the interfaith route, and in some ways, that's the endless war is part of our new narrative, but the other part is this pitting of religions against each other. And it seems like maybe that's the one of the larger narratives, that if we're going to be peacemakers, that's something that we really have to address. I'd really like maybe to follow up with you offline about this, about some of those relationships you made. I think it's very important. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then Ben came on, and Ben got dropped off, and Ben came back on. I don't know, Ben, are you fully active now? Are you going to mime for us? All right, well, yeah, Ben, sorry, we're not going to be able to get your input this way. Ben and I have talked some before. Yeah, no volume at this point. Yeah, I mean, we'll find a way, Ben. We've talked before. I want to get your input on these questions. And we'll find a way to do that, perhaps in a different venue. So now I guess we will ask Tori. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, from First Mennonite Church of Denver. I'm the children and youth pastor, so 18-year-olds on down. Probably the first way we engage is simply by teaching the Bible narrative, and each year we make sure we talk about the conquest and settlement in Joshua with our 3-year-olds through our 5th grade. And that's part of our yearly cycle, and just having us wrestle with what's it mean to own this in our story, and what's that mean for us right now. And then with our junior hires, again, we have a 3-year cycle, and one of the years, I sort of smile, I don't know if that's good or bad, we go through the book of Revelation. So we're doing that right now with them. And I'm looking at 2 Marvel comic book and DC comics that we use alongside Revelation, just to show the imagery of power, violence, and all the myths of violence in our narratives, let alone cinema and whatever else. So showing them that it's seeped into all the stories and the narratives that we use to entertain ourselves. And then beyond that, it's probably more for adults, but hoping that translates into families. If people are aware of, and I know at least Ben is, of Raw Tools ministry in our conference. And I'll post that link after I'm done if nobody else gets to it first. So giving our youth, and that was on a Sunday morning where they could see tangibly a weapon to a garden tool and wrestle with that scripture. But what I wonder about is that a lot of this is story-based, and what are the actual actions? And I do think that the CO status, I have a huge, thick binder from my time in Oregon about 8 years ago, going through a training on conscientious objection, but it doesn't seem as relevant. I'm wondering, how do we speak to and actively engage drone warfare, and how do we actively engage recruitment done in less. We're a fairly affluent congregation, and so what's it mean for so much of the recruiting being done in less affluent context? And then lastly, I also wonder, especially with all the political rhetoric right now, similar as what was said before, how do we reach out to our Muslim neighbors who my children go to school with at their elementary school? And what does that peacemaking look like with our relationships and our daily living? Okay, that's enough for me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. No, that was really helpful. Let me comment on a couple things. One, I did neglect to say that another important part, I think, is the violence narrative and the media violence and whatnot. And I think our churches and our parents and youth pastors and whatnot, they do have a concern about that. Thanks for bringing that back up. And I guess that's a plug for the webinar that's coming up on the Gathering Place, or maybe it already came up with that's going to be addressing just that exact subject.
Yep. And can we also try Ben again? He was trying to change a microphone.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, are you there?
No, shucks. Oh, that's too bad. Well, feel free, like I said, Ben, to chat your comments in, and I'll make sure that they get spoken out loud. So, back to you, Jason.
Yeah, yes, this is really helpful to me. You had to kind of see the landscape that we're working in and some of the issues that are important to folks. I guess what I'd like to shift gears now a little bit. I had put out a couple. You know what? Maybe I can if it's okay, I'll read kind of what Ben's writing real quick and just give a brief overview there. And for those of you who don't know, Ben is the campus pastor for Third Way Collective. It's a Penn State Anabaptist campus ministry, and so he's in a unique place. They have Penn State's got strong relationships with the Department of Defense, ROTC presence, and things like that. But he has many Mennonite students on campus, and they're stepping away from their tradition for the first time. They're sort of being pulled by these other things, which is a unique position, but it's also sort of, a microcosm, I think, of what we're all facing. That's sort of the part of this phase that we're in. Dwight Eisenhower said the military-industrial complex, but it's so much deeper now. Every sector of society has some sort of form. There's a tentacle of our defense industry as a part of it. It's funny, Ben said he sees the strongest peace allies from Buddhists and Quakers, which, hey, exactly, work with whoever God sends you. If it's okay, I will change gears, and I think what I had originally put on the as questions to consider is what peace and justice issues are important to you, and how can MCSA support your work. We've heard a little bit about maybe what you're doing. Maybe not so much are there issues out there that that your kids or the youth in your church or your ministry are excited about, but they don't have an outlet for? Are they talking about Black Lives Matter? Are they talking about some of the domestic issues that are pretty play a large part in our politics and our society today? What are some of the new or maybe the new edges of peacemaking that you can see our youth start to gravitate towards? I'd love to maybe go back to the top of the horn. I think this is very apropos to hear from Michelle and maybe some of her students.
Oh, we missed that last part, so I don't know what you're asking.
I'm sorry. What are some of the peace and justice issues that our young people are excited about and they want to engage? Maybe the church has an outlet for it, maybe not. But what's really drawing their passion?
Just popcorn it out. What are some of the issues you think are really important that you're excited about? Yeah. Well, it would have to do with justice and peacemaking.
I think the Israel-Palestine topic is very interesting.
Israel-Palestine. Here at Eston College, I know several of my students, not necessarily in this class, are working with me. We're trying to become a host town for Syrian refugees. It would be another issue.
Personally interested in the disconnect between a society that promotes militarism but that doesn't take care of the veterans.
Did you hear that, Jason?
No, could you repeat that?
There's a passion for the weird disconnect between U.S. being so militaristic and yet so unwilling to take care of its veterans.
Got it.
Anything else? I know that we have pushed pretty hard to connect why we are nonviolent with the biblical narrative and really pushed Christocentric hermeneutics. some of my students are rolling their eyes because we pushed it that much. But I think that's really important too.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thanks for those. Clayton, I don't know, do you have anything to chime in on that? What issues and things are getting your youth excited?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind in discussions we've had recently. One being more to do with entertainment, the entertainment piece, especially violent video games. Some of the conversations we've had about what does this mean? Is it okay for us to use this as an outlet for our violence or our violent tendencies, or how does this affect us? You know, it's especially with the guys, that's a thing. Another thing has to do with yeah, sort of along the lines of like bullying and sort of more interpersonal violence that they experience on a more daily basis. So yeah, how do you respond in those everyday sort of circumstances to violence that we're experiencing? So it's that living a peace every day, and I think that kind of gets to what Tori was asking, action things, and you know, sometimes having those conversations gets, I mean, it's very theoretical, very out there, but yeah, there are certainly conversations happening about, you know, what does it mean to respond to, you know, somebody being bullied in the hallway, or even like violence on the basketball court. What do you do with that?
Gotcha. Good practical tools to use in every day. I think yeah, there's always a need for that. Thank you. Mike?
Not much to add. I'm a little disappointed right now that I wish there was more passion amongst my senior hires about issues. I think I have that unique dilemma of 35 kids on the senior high roster, about 29 of them go to Christopher Dock Mennonite High School. And I think they get lazy with walking it out. Now, to be fair, too, a lot of them are really busy with stuff, but we did have a good session a year ago where we talked about sex trafficking and stuff that really was happening. And I seem to get into that for a bit. And I'm bringing in some African Americans in a few weeks to talk about Black Lives Matter. But I'm sad to say my senior hires have not been real passionate about any particular issue.
Right. Well, you know, Ben raised a point here that I think is applicable to what we're talking about too. Is that we're so wired now. We know about every issue as soon as it happens. You know, and at what point does paralysis set in, and what point does discouragement set in, and so that's all relevant too. I think that can contribute to some of maybe what you're seeing as well. Tori, did you have anything else to add? You kind of touched on some of this in the first part. I appreciate you looking at the broader picture, but are there other issues that are exciting the youth in your church?
It's sometimes simply hard to know. So, yeah, I'm not always sure I have a good pulse on that, and so I just keep bringing what I hear over the years. Yeah, that's the best I can answer at the moment.
No, that's perfect. Appreciate you being honest about that. Yeah, it's tough, and that's kind of where we find ourselves, right? How do we teach and help? But if we don't know where the passion is to tap onto, it makes it difficult. I saw Rachel just put a comment up there. I appreciate folks are putting in a lot of good links here on the side to some of the things that we're talking about. I saw a link to an MCC resource where a veteran's telling his story, and that is some powerful stuff. If you have a chance to check out Ben's story, and the other links are great as well. If we could, yeah, shift again to maybe the latter part of the call here, I would like to say thanks for helping us get a bit of a survey of where we are. But I would really like to, you know, for us to sort of take the top off and think about and dream together what would it look like? You know, if you were unlimited in your resources and time and whatnot and all that stuff, what kind of resource or what things would you do with youth? Would you offer to help encourage them and inspire them and keep them going and own that peace witness in a unique way, knowing that that they're going to be as we all know, the leaders of tomorrow, and they're going to be facing this new context that the baby boomers left us, and we're probably going to leave them. So there's no wrong answer here. You know, I do want to say you cannot get this wrong. Whatever you want to say, you know, this is kind of that time where you're brainstorming and we'll see, and you know, who knows what what the Spirit of God leads us as the church to regarding this, and who knows what comes up. But I know that's kind of a tall order. But again, please just feel free to dream a little big here, or small, if that's where it takes you. Michelle, I'd love to hear from you and your class on that. What would it look like? What could we do together that would maybe further where we're going, or take us in a new direction, but maybe respond to the times we're in a little bit better?
Okay, we're back on. All right. Some ideas from you all. Shout them out.
Me, probably like a going source, like have youth get together and probably fly out to certain areas in the world and have real life conversations with these people.
Did you catch that, Jason?
I did. So yeah, like real hands-on experiential learning with some of these issues.
Yeah. Yeah. If you knew you weren't going to get killed, what would it mean to go to the front of the war and see it and get the real thing? Good. Thank you, Abraham. Some others?
Well, oftentimes, the reason that there is like conflict and that sort of stuff is because one side doesn't see the other side as a full person, and like Abraham was saying, that interaction is important to actually create the peace. To see them as a person, to see them as also having wants and needs. So I would agree, going to the people and just having a conversation with them is incredibly important.
A variety of times, we forget that people are people, and I feel as if not having that interaction with somebody, not having that conversation isolates us from a variety of people that we can relate to. Just talk to them. I guess the world we live in right now is like every someone's idea of a perfect world will always be someone else's nightmare. And that's why there's so much conflict.
Did you got all that of Malik's?
Might need a bit of a recap on that. Didn't quite catch everything.
Yeah, Malik was really affirming the first two comments. Just my class is really saying the importance of seeing the other as a full-fledged person or a full-fledged people group. That what really I think makes the teachings of Jesus sing is when we see Jesus in others. Now, am I doing that? Am I okay on that? Okay.
Fantastic. A lot of wisdom there. Thank you. I didn't want to cut you off, though. Are there others?
Real quickly, any others?
I'd say just being informed. I don't know. I feel like coming to Heston College, it's opened my eyes to a lot of the things that are going on in the world that I wasn't very familiar with in my small hometown. So I think just having more conversations and, yeah, like the others have said, hearing the other side and, yeah, just being willing to have, just being informed on, like, a well-rounded information.
I would quickly add, people will snort, I think, but if I could get rid of all the violent video games in the world, I would, just like that. But, yeah. I think that desensitizes us. That's it for us for now.
Well, can I ask a follow-up question of you quickly, Michelle?
Yes.
You talked about the importance of our hermeneutic and our Jesus-centered hermeneutic. Do you find yourself, are you teaching that in a different way these days? Are you doing new things, or is it just a matter of presenting things as they are, and that worked 10 years ago and it still works today, or how have you sort of adapted how you approach teaching that?
I think that when I was a youth pastor, I was afraid that my high schoolers would not hear it well to hear that the Bible disagrees on some of its ethics between the Old Testament and the New. And a gift I give to the entire church is that high schoolers can understand hermeneutics, even if you never mention it in that way. You could, I think that the peace position is much more readily accepted and people get passionate about when they see how clearly how that you have to make some choices whether you're going to say that the wars in the Old Testament are authoritative or Jesus in the New Testament. And when I've laid those arguments out, even when I was teaching in Lithuania to a mainly agnostic atheist students, then many more of them at least considered a nonviolent Jesus. And so I don't know that I've done any new techniques. I've just been more convinced as the years go around that there are high schoolers who are smart enough to realize that there are wars in the Old Testament and Jesus says no to wars. And they want a way to figure that problem out, and that we need to jump into that conversation with both feet.
That's very encouraging. That's very invigorating to hear. I like that, yeah. Appreciate that. Clayton, love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think I agree that with the idea that if money was not a factor, and maybe safety was not a factor, just flying out and experiencing it. One of the blessings that I have in April is to be able to go to Palestine and Israel to experience that firsthand, and my hope is to bring that back not only to the church, but also bring it into the high school and middle school, sharing some of those experiences that I've had. But to be able to have youth a part of that, I think of John Murray, one of the other pastors here, takes sometimes high school students to India when he goes, and they experience that sort of cross-cultural and interfaith dialogue at a whole new level, and just hearing their stories when they come back from that, the growth that comes out of that. But not just to have those individual times, but how do we continue to foster that sort of conversation and make those experiences last more than kind of the high of a month or two? How do we build on that? How do we continue that sort of thing? And I was having a conversation with someone just the other day, talking about a gentleman that's going to be released from prison in May, and what would happen if he was to come to church here? How would our congregation respond to that? And kind of giving us a pretty bad grade on what that might look like. Unfortunately, for some, that would just inspire too much fear, too much, sort of how do we protect ourselves? And that's honestly that's our default reaction. And so I guess the big picture thing is, how do we find ways to escape this narrative and this first reaction of fear to everything that's different and everything that has the potential to harm us, when in reality we take on all kinds of things every day that have the potential to harm us, but for some reason we don't fear some things and we do fear others. So again, that becomes sort of theoretical. How do we move that into a practical experience? Yeah, that's further conversation to be had.
That's very interesting. So maybe hearing that we do service really well, but maybe the service component, having more experiential learning and exposure to issues and to other people, that could maybe be even more valuable for our own formation in the long run than just doing the service. So yeah, I think maybe it's not too far off the beaten trail, of what can emerge from that. And you think about CPT and MCC and other folks who do these learning type things, I think we could probably figure something out. Thank you. Mike.
Well, just as I hear the comments of the Heston students and then some of the others of you, I just want to redouble my efforts to create relationships, especially with people not like us. So for me, because we've got an interfaith network in the area, I really want to move more into that area getting some of our congregation involved. And we're having a speaker coming in this coming Sunday that initially we were going to approach racism and kind of the Black Lives Matter, but we backed off a bit and we're just going to work on, we described it as what is our cultural intelligence? And it's kind of assessing how we as a congregation, even though we think we're friendly and welcoming, how we feel to people that aren't like us in a gentle way. And I think that's going to start more discussions about how welcoming are we in our community, especially to people that might come from a different ethnic group or a different religion. And so, but I'm agreeing wholeheartedly with the comments made that it's relationships that I'm going to work on more. Although if anyone puts out a good new curriculum for senior hires, I'm going to be looking at it. So.
Well, Ben made some comments along those lines, just reaffirming a powerful thing from the semester. They had an interfaith group, interfaith dinner, so you get the chance to do that. And I think that goes hand in hand with something Clayton said as well. So what if it's one thing to go across, religious and cultural boundaries that are fairly big and pronounced, I suppose. What about someone who's coming out of prison? What about, if you're a liberal church and you have someone come in who's using maybe God and country language and maybe they worship in a different way, or can you bring them into your church and do they feel at home? I think in our own church that would be a bigger issue. We would certainly welcome someone who was a Muslim or Jewish, and we would feel really good about ourselves for doing it. But if someone from a different sort of social economic pattern, that can be more difficult at times. So this is interesting to hear. Tori?
Yeah, what I've been wondering about is a 3 to 6 month commitment similar to a sports team, a music group, choir, orchestra, similar to robotics, where you would have one evening a week and a Saturday morning or one chunk during your weekend for those weeks, just like a team or whatever else, and you would focus on, and I don't know if peacemaking would be central or it'd be Anabaptist or Discipleship 101. I mean, I don't know what to call it, and somebody else who's better at branding can brand it. But started talking with at least we've got a door program here, and I think their leader Antonio Lucero is very capable, and we also have VORP right in our building as well, the Victim Offender Reconciliation Program. So we have those tool sets. We're also in a metro area, and we have about 5 congregations. So I'm like, what would it be like to have 3 to 12 youth who would say, hey, we're going to sign up for this, to charge $200 to $500. You can't, force them to show up because it's like, hey, we're going to bench you if you don't show up, or you're not going to be first chair, or you're not going to win the robotics, whatever the motivation factor is. But the investment would at least be there. Let alone could that also provide income and the utilization of skills for, Antonio, Angel with VORP, and all these other people around. Let alone our congregations have so many storytellers and so many people doing things very active that, we can't do everything all the time, but could we at least expose our youth to the things that are going on in our congregations already? So that's what I spend my time dreaming about, and if somebody else has a pilot program similar to this, I would love to learn more.
Well, let's make one. Let's make it happen. This has been very, very enriching for me. I really appreciate you all sharing this, and I think there's a lot I do want to follow up with individually with folks. I do want to take a little bit of this, or the end of this time, because there's so much collective good thought and wisdom and experience here. I'll just give everyone one last chance. If you have any final comments you want to make in general, or respond to something that you've heard here, give you a chance to do that, and if not, just a chance to say our goodbyes.
Well, that's fine. I would love to say that I am so grateful for all of your comments, and some things that I was thinking about when picking up other comments and listening to them was, what would it mean for us in our congregations, youth included, but I think even in a broader term, that we all kind of go through an intercultural competency training, you know what I mean? That, as well as, I was just at the Mennonite Educator Association meetings last weekend, and Hesston College actually three of the education professors there led us in stereotype threat and what does that look like, and that was just very eye-opening to see how do we have perceptions of other groups of people and we don't even, it was just a very eye-opening thing on how do we work for peace and justice when the playing field is not level to begin with, and what does that mean as people of faith to see that everyone deserves the same amount of love. That was just sort of my 2 cents there, and Tori, along with your idea of like a peace school or curriculum or something, like what would it also mean to engage our Mennonite camps that already have space, that already have programs going, that have staff? What would it mean to use them and the resources that they already have? I don't know, that's already available to us. I remember when I was in 3rd grade, I think, I went to Bluffton College as a part of a choir, and it was called Voices for Peace. Maybe, does anybody know, like The Lion and the Lamb, their program that they have there at Bluffton College? I think they sponsored this sort of choir, and it was sort of like a long weekend, and all kids from all over came, and we did a lot of different peace and peace building activities, and then learned songs at the end and sang it together. So that was a really meaningful experience as a child.
Yeah, so if appreciate those good words and exactly identifying what we have already to build on, because we do have so much. We'll go around this final time for any final words you might have. Michelle, you and your class.
Real quickly, class, any final words?
As I was thinking about
No, we aren't. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No, we're good. Go ahead, Emily.
As I was thinking about the last comment I made, I think just knowing some of my peers, that not to put a stereotype on some other colleges other than, or specifically Goshen College, how there's a huge push for like peace and justice there. But from talking to some of the students there, it seems like there's maybe a little bit of a lack of like Jesus, or like peace and justice is really important and crucial, but like how do we also level that out with like how Jesus lived, and also like realizing that the Holy Spirit is at work through us, and like how do we I don't know, I would just like to see a little bit more of balance between the importance of peace and justice, but also the importance of following the footsteps of Jesus, and how do we, I don't know if that makes sense, but like making sure that it's a level that we consider both of those important things, if that makes sense. I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense. The way I hear that from a lot of people across the church. We don't want to be technocrats of peace. We don't want to just be technicians. We want to be these spirit-filled people following the footsteps of Jesus. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something that Heston's actually doing this weekend is there's going to be a multiple church visit.
Yes.
Thing. And I would have been really interested to do that in high school. I think that would have been really cool to actually go to other churches, whether it be other denominations or other faiths, as if going to a mosque. And I know that churches would not, you get a lot of pushback from that, and a lot of people would not like it, but I think that might be good for youth to go and experience more than just their home church. And that would create ties and would help create, I would say, peace with that relationship building.
Anyone else? All good stuff. We're so appreciative that you're hearing all our multiple voices. Thank you.
It's very cool. Thanks for participating. It's good to see you all. Clayton, any final words?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this Post-it note that I keep on my screen. It might be backwards, I'm not sure. It just says why, not what, and just reminds me, hopefully, why we're doing this. And tagging on to the two comments that were made from Michelle's class, yeah, we do this because of what we believe in Jesus' teaching, and also what our forefathers and foremothers in the Anabaptist faith have taught us. What we can take from that journey and that story and that witness is hugely important, and to not to focus, find a good balance between, I guess, those older stories as well as contemporary stories, and seeing that. And I agree. I was just thinking about sort of the inter-church relationships, going and visiting different churches, and actually my experience has been quite the opposite. I've had we took our group to one church this year so far, and planning for a couple more this semester. But actually, it was the parents that were like, this hasn't happened in a couple years, and it needs to happen. You need to take our kids to different churches so they can learn to worship. And yeah, I got a little bit of pushback from other people, but generally, I think if the youth are excited about it and parents are excited about it, and I think a lot of parents, at least a lot of parents that I encounter, are excited to have kind of safe experiences of different cultures. And that's one way to do it, is to go as a group, to have the church know that you're coming, and to be kind of excited about experiencing this new thing and a new way of worshiping. And like you said, it breaks down some of those boundaries sometimes we have. We might be really excited to welcome in one kind of person, and then another not so excited, but maybe us entering into their space is a different way to learn and to grow together.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I do a lot of meetings with peace folks, and the big thing is people say we have to convince all these other Christians in the United States not to support war. And if we did that, then we could have some influence. And I always say, well, have we been to those churches? Have we sat with those people? Do we hear what they hear? Do we try to feel their fears and enter into what they're doing and how they're responding? Or are we just saying, well, we got it right, and we got Coke and they got Pepsi, they just need to drink Coke? There's a lot more into it than that. Thank you for taking time today, Clayton. Mike?
Nothing new to add. I just thank you, and I've been encouraged by the comments to keep looking at ways we can build bridges and relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do want to follow up with some of those interfaith contacts you're making in the community. Thank you. I just say this from Ben, you all can read it too, but he puts that big question out there. It's going to take time, but there's urgency. The problems are now, and I think that's something that we're all going to wrestle with. I think I think your Buddhist friends would say there is no time. The future is an illusion, so you can always, if you need a break, you can just think about that. Tori, do you have any final words for us?
Just very grateful for MCC, Mennonite Mission Network, and countless other groups that put together video content. I think curriculum is fine or great. Books are great. Michelle, thanks for your book. The title's blanking me at the moment. Books are great, but video content is really handy and easy to share. So thanks.
Oh, good practical word. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yeah, again, for me, I'll just say thank you all, and I do want to maybe continue this conversation not as a group, but separately, and as we continue to go down this road together. I'll turn it back over to Rachel. Thank you.
Well, I'm so grateful for this conversation, and well done, Jason, and getting everyone's voices around and around the horn, and hearing everyone and pulling people in, and gathering us together. So well done with that. And many thanks to each of you for taking an hour here out of your afternoon and to brainstorm with us about how can we create a clearer Anabaptist witness here in today's 21st century. So especially as it relates to our youth and young adults. And maybe I'm from more of a contemplative stream, but I also think that as we try to work outward for peace, like we also need to also attend to that inner peace as well at the same time. And so, I leave you with peace. Thank you for joining the Gathering Place here this month for this learning conversation. And I do want to tell you that next Tuesday, is our webinar with Dirk Eitzen that is talking about today's media violence and the desensitization that and how does it affect us and our youth who choose to play these video games and other types of media. So that will be, I think we have a full house for that already, but it will be recorded so you can watch that on your own time once it's posted. So thanks again, Jason, for leading us and for gathering us together about these important themes. And we look forward to working with you as things continue to get created here in the front in the future. So many thanks to everyone for gathering along, and feel free to copy and paste the group chats resources that were put up and stuff. And until next time, peace to you. So until later, thank you.